And that finding is reiterated by another study which wasn't able to use a lottery design, but really carefully matched the children. And this was done by Rathunde and Csikzentmihalyi of Flow fame. They tested 590 children in 5 Montessori middle schools, and they carefully matched them demographically with 6 conventional public schools. So parent education, parent income, they were in the same communities where the Montessories were, and then they also controlled for these features in the analyses. So one thing they did was they gave children questionnaires asking about things like teacher support, order of their classroom, and emotional safety. You can see the Montessori children are scoring significantly higher. They also gave children beepers that beeped children at random points during the day for, I think it was 2 weeks. And they asked them what they were doing, and they looked at how they spent their time. And you can see Montessori children are spending significantly more time in academic work while they're at school in 6th and 8th grade, more time doing chores, a little less time socializing, less time in leisure activities and games, and a little bit less time in eating and maintenance activities. This is interesting. And then what kind of context they're in. If children are in a Montessori middle school, they're doing a lot less passive listening, a lot more collaborative work, a lot more individual work, and a lot less of watching movies while they're at school. So those are some of their findings. Some others were about how they were feeling as they did work. So while they were doing schoolwork, Montessori middle schoolers were significantly more likely to report that they were with their friends, as middle schoolers love to be, that they're intrinsically motivated, that they're in a flow state, which is a state where they're reporting feeling highly challenged and highly skilled at the same time. Montessori children reported feeling more happy, more relaxed, more proud, and more sociable as opposed to lonely, and also significantly more engaged. So, you know, Montessori environments really seem to respond well to what children need at different stages in their development. Jackie Eccles, who used to be a professor at the University of Michigan, and only for the sake of weather, I'm sure, moved to the University of California at Irvine, and she has written for a long time about how our conventional schools have a really, really poor person-environment fit. That just as children are getting to a point in their lives where they're ready to take more control, ready to feel more agency, ready to have more power, we put them in these middle schools and then these high schools that are increasingly restrictive and give them increasingly less freedom to make choices, to spend time with each other, which is what adolescents really want to do. It's really, really sad, and you know, we wonder why our young people have you know, a lot of psychological difficulties during that phase, and our school systems certainly aren't helping. Well, a study that I think reflects this nicely was done by Shanklin et al., looking at college outcomes. And this is not only Montessori. They had to combine Montessori, Steiner, and New School students because they didn't have a big enough sample, and they compared them to 80 people who had gone to conventional schools. And the criteria for being considered in the alternative school group was at least 5 years, so could have been 1st to 5th grade. They'd been in an alternative school. It could have been, you know, 8th grade to finishing high school too. And they controlled for the way that they were in the last year of high school, and then they looked at them across the first year of university. And they found that the alternative school sample showed significantly less anxiety, significantly less depression, greater life satisfaction in their first year of college, and also showed greater achievement in terms of the difficulty of the courses they were taking and what kind of grades they were getting. And that's, you know, controlling for, again, many different things, including last year of high school. And then there's several other studies showing other outcomes, academic achievement. For example, one study that came out recently that had Montessori from 1st to 5th grade, and so children, many of the ones entering at 1st grade hadn't had Montessori before, whereas by the time they got to 5th grade, many of them had been in Montessori for a few years. And what they found was, compared to children who were not in Montessori, academic achievement of the children in Montessori grew and grew over time, so that by 4th and 5th grade they were doing significantly better than the other children. A study in France by Besançon and Lubar showed that creativity in children in Montessori is significantly higher in elementary. I have found in some of my studies, I've looked at creativity in 3 to 5-year-olds and not seen it on the kinds of tasks that I have. I think, but then, you know, in the 12-year-olds in the essays that I just showed you, we also saw it. So my guess is it's something that, at least in the way that we test it, comes out over time. But I have to say, when I talk to Montessori 3 to 5-year-olds, I can find them very, very, very creative in the way that they approach tasks. Like a child who was in a sticker task I've been doing here at the school, where there's 5 stickers that they need to divide between. They can have as many as they want, or they can give some stickers to somebody else. And a child looked at it, you know, several of them were a bit distressed about the fact that there was 5 and there's 2 envelopes there. Some of them just willingly took all 5, but some of them wanted to share all 5, and others would look and just be distressed about, you know, it's not an even number. And so there was the child that put 2 in one and 2 in the other, and then looked at me, and I said, yeah, what about that one? Well, that's the remainder. And I had some scissors there, and the decision was to cut it in half, which I've never seen before. So you know, very, very creative. Math concepts, Kelly Mix and her colleagues were looking at understanding of the decimal system, and finds that children who are in Montessori have a much deeper conceptual understanding of the decimal system, which makes sense. Kathy Dorman did a fabulous study up in Milwaukee, where children had been in the public Montessoris through 5th grade, and now they're looking at 10th to 12th grade math, science, English, and social studies scores. And Montessori at that point didn't go any further than 5th grade, so they didn't have the option. But even though they'd been in the same schools as the other children since 6th grade, and even though over half of them are in the very top high schools in Milwaukee that you have to audition to get into and things, the children who had been in Montessori previously did significantly better on the math science composite. So that's just a little taste of some of the research showing that, you know, these benefits aren't over in primary. They do go on, and it's one of the things I'm really hoping to do in the coming years, is do a more focused study of older children in Montessori, because again, the person-environment fit is so much better. There's so many reasons to think, and you meet the children and you know it. They just do so much better when they can be in an environment like this. 2 sources for recent reviews. This chapter 11 of my book, I tried to talk about a lot of the more recent research, but there's even more to it. And then the British journal Nature just came out recently with a new online open access journal called Science of Learning, which I didn't realize till I saw this article, but she reviews Montessori education nicely too, with some different studies than I knew of. So Montessori education does seem to confer advantages in many different areas for children. And I think this makes a lot of sense, because if you think about what conventional schools were designed to do, they're really designed around improving test scores. It's really kind of sad to think of, but you go to the Department of Education's website and you look at the mission statements, or you go look at mission statements of schools, and you know, it's out there front and center that improving test scores in order to create a better workforce is a really, really primary sort of a goal. And there's a hope that human development will go well too, but it's kind of out there on the outside. You know, if you talk to teachers, you look at what we're rewarding, you look at these No Child Left Behind and so on tests, you know, that's what we're going for in most of our schools. Whereas Montessori was developed to be an aid to life, to look at human development. How can we help children to develop into the best beings they can be? And it just so happens that they do well on test scores because we do that. But the real goal, the real aim, what we really care about is human development. In the field of economics, since the 80s or so, there's been a focus called the capability approach that Martha Nussbaum's probably most famous for. And according to this, all humans should have the capability, if in a democracy, if we're nurturing capabilities, all humans should have the capability to live a life and achieve outcomes that they have reason to value, that they find meaning in. And again, my sense is Montessori education gives children the tools for this. It's not clear to me that conventional education really does that. Again, you know, you meet children who've gone through it and you just see the differences. Montessori had really high aspirations as she went through her life. So one of her last books was Education and Peace, and she wrote, "An education capable of saving humanity is no small undertaking. It involves spiritual development, the enhancement of one's value as an individual, and the preparation of young people to understand the times in which they live." And I think this form of education is so helpful to that, and I hope that, you know, conventional education, which really hasn't been around all that long, it was an experiment that we started in about the middle of the 1800s, and I think many would say it really hasn't worked out so great. My hope is that eventually this kind of education and other alternatives, if people want to try those, will supplant this conventional system that doesn't work so well. So I thank the Brady Education, Sir John Templeton, and Wildflower Foundations that help with funding the research that I've presented to you today, and my collaborators and assistants and the schools and the people who helped, and photographs by Envu and also by Laura Joyce Hubbard and others right here at Forest Bluff.